Hello, Nacho. How are you?
I'm fine. How about you, Lorenzo?
I'm fine. Thank you for being here with us today. We are going to talk what it means to be a developer and what it takes to be one. So, what are your thoughts first of what it means to learn how to program?
Well, for me, I think being a developer, in a standpoint of view, is anyone who writes code or writes instructions for a program that's later going to be sold, or it's either going to be employed in its own company, or maybe be in its own area of work, like with close coworkers, and it's not going to leave that workspace. What it takes to be a developer, well, actually depends on whatever you want to develop. Uh, if you want to develop highly complex industrial and enterprise software, you're going to need much more experience than if you're trying to develop something in your free time in order for you to get a laugh on or to improve your own skills.
Well, for example, going to the main route, I started developing mainly because of my need in financial tasks, where I can switch from Microsoft Excel to Python. And it was refreshing and released me from the prison of Microsoft Excel to be able to tell the computer to do heavy tasks and routine tasks that drive me mad every day and say, hey, this is what you have to do it for me. And I think programming is explaining the computer in computer terms another that we want a specific result. And everyone, I think, can be a programmer, but also there are rule of thumb, if you want, to say that these are a must that every developer must have. For example, how do you think you have to respond when you have a mistake, a problem? I do not stand up till I have a solution or explanation of what is the problem that I'm facing, I think. And people do not have patience and give up easily. What do you think about that?
I think that everyone should learn from their mistakes, especially when you are a junior developer or a self-taught developer. You're going to have a lot of mistakes. And one of the key problems between a self-taught developer and a career or a study engineer developer is that when you're a self-taught developer, you focus only on making it work. But when you are a career developer or a study developer, you try to make it efficient aside from making it work. So what you're gonna get is this: a company with no senior developers or with few senior developers is gonna have their code running, but running inefficiently, and that probably is gonna cost them in the long run.
Well, I have to catch you on that because I think the same is that every CS student, they are focused on performance. How performance it has the software, but they do not care if you want to give it a term, if the software does or does not meet the goal. Is that at the end of the day, we are developing a tool to do a task. And sometimes I think people miss out what the real goal is. They focus on technical aspects, but they do not make the matter at the end of the day. And the client does not matter about that.
Well, you're right, but yeah, something fell off. Well, you're absolutely right, but you see, the problem in here is that while you need to get the code working right now, and it's probably not very important at the beginning, the efficiency, when you are continuously developing that app or platform or website, it starts to get heavier and heavier and needs more processing power. And you get to one point where the site or app you're hosting on, let's say, AWS, is going to take a lot of space within the servers, and it's going to cost you dearly. So ideally, you want to make good software, quick software, and efficient software, not super efficient, in order to be able to upgrade it later, but you are gonna need for it to be somewhat efficient and somewhat upgradable.
Yeah, and not only meeting the goal is important, but you have to take care of different aspects that at the moment they are not key, but they are going to be in the future. For example, we have the case of Facebook with Hack, that it is a compiler because they use PHP, and it is a horrible language. You and I can agree on that.
Actually, I'm kind of beginning to like PHP. I think JavaScript was unnecessary when you find the right PHP library. I think programming evolution peaked at PHP.
Yeah. Well, both PHP and JavaScript, they are incomplete programming language in the sense that they were developed in a week, both.
Yeah, but we're not gonna get on a discussion of which one is the best developer program. We're gonna probably make a podcast on that. I don't hate PHP. I think it's a great way to start. Almost 80% of the web is actually code in PHP, but that has a reason, and everything has a reason. If I had to say something for someone trying to get into this world, is learn all that you can, but do not get yourself crazy. Do not try to learn everything. Focus on things.
Yeah. What do you think about this imposter syndrome? That sometimes you are learning stuff and you feel like God and you think you can do almost anything. But sometimes on the other side you feel overwhelmed because you see all these tools that you think you must know in order to do a simple page app, and they are not necessary. So also I think web development has become crazy the last years, but I think you have to handle this. You have to know that this context you will be continually learning and learning stuff. But you don't have to go nuts about this.
I think you're absolutely right. There is a highly imposter syndrome running around, especially between IT companies and self-taught students. I actually have some of that myself. That's why I'm looking forward I'm trying to decide if doing or not doing a CS degree.
You should not.
He thinks I should not. I think maybe I should. Maybe I shouldn't. I don't know. It's something I would do in my free time. I don't think it's necessary.
Well, I will give you my opinion. In my side, when that I'm doing almost all financial tasks, I do what it is called data science or quantitative development. And mainly you found out that you have mathematicians, financial analysts, economists, that they know how to code in high brackets because they poorly code at all, and they do not have a CS degree. But on the other side, when I found a CS degree person and he wants to do something, a financial topic, idea, or a trading bot, or whatever you want, they lack completely about the knowledge. And even though they can do the most performant training bot, if you don't have the knowledge, the background knowledge, it's almost the same. It's because it is two sides paths that you have to take account of this. You have to know how to code, and you have to know what task you have to achieve.
Well, yeah, that's absolutely right. But we get back to the things we were talking earlier. If you want to make that code more efficient, or you want to get a full perspective of what that code you're doing is going to snowball into, you need to have experience or a degree in order to get experience. There's also something that it's worth mentioning is that today you can get a job in the industry being self-taught. That's not something that was possible 10, 20, or 30 years ago. That's the stories like Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, Mark Zuckerberg, all of those self-taught entrepreneurs. They were like, that was not the common. That was not the common man in IT at the time. Nowadays, it's more acceptable, and you absolutely do not need a degree in order to get a job in IT. I cannot repeat this enough. However, you are gonna need experience and you need to get it somewhere. And first jobs, especially if you're self-taught, are gonna be a pain in the ass because you're gonna need someone to trust you, a junior, as an intern, in order to get you your first IT job. Once you get your first IT job, you get a few 1-2 contacts. You get a name for yourself within that company. That's gonna snowball into more jobs, more experience, and after a while, nobody's gonna care if you had a degree or not because you have all this experience in the area.
It's like more like an entry barrier, if you want.
Exactly. You had an entry, absolutely had an entry barrier. Like all jobs, like today in this economy, all jobs require you to have a little bit of experience. But you know,
well, that's completely the mean. It's like you don't have experience, please do a junior job, but you need experience for this. It's like, come on.
Exactly. Absolutely.
On the other side, for a beginner that wants to start in this world, we have different programming language and they cannot decide which one to pick. So I want you to make like a quick overlook of the different languages, and we're going to discuss what is the difference between them and why you should pick one over the other. You want to start?
Yeah, of course. But first of all, I'd like to clarify. When you're an absolute beginner, and I mean no previous knowledge, no IT background,
from scratch.
Try not to focus on the language. Focus on the logic, because if you master the logic, that logic is going to repeat pretty much in every language. There are languages that are coded similarly but have different uses, that are coded differently but have the same logic.
Focus on the fundamentals, because
exactly.
Everything will change at the end of the day. It's like in 10 years from now, maybe we have another language that overtake the place of Python, maybe JavaScript, please God, or any other one. But the fundamentals will remain, and the logic of the programmer will remain. But for example, in your case, with which language did you start, and where you move from that?
Well, my first language learning was actually Python, because it was easy to learn and it has a lot of application. It has an active community, which makes it the most popular language at the moment, 2023. I don't think that's going to hold up in time, like in 5-10 years. I don't think Python is going to remain in that spot. But for today, it has an amazing community. It's easy to learn for how it is coded. So I would absolutely recommend Python.
Well, for example, if I want to describe what Python it is, you have an interactive language where you can make any command by command in the prompt and have an instant response of the language of what you are doing. So it is a scripted language. It's like you almost can chat with the machine. On the other side, it is general purpose. You can do almost anything with Python. And that does not mean that you shouldn't. For example, I do not recommend at all to use Python for web dev. It's like, it is a nightmare. Django, well, if you want, you can use Flask for microservices, but that is the point. I would not use Python for the backend. On the other side, I think it is really good for data analysis. That's the point of the language itself. Guido van Rossum created Python to make all his counts more easily in comparison of C, because you can do multiplication or 2 + 2 and just write it out and have the result there without having to specify how much of memory you have to allocate to this variable, you have to initialize, or you have to free the memory later. You don't have that need to do it here. And well, you have Python, and then you have the most favorite one, if you want, JavaScript. You want to start with JavaScript, or do you want me to kill it?
I'm not a fan of JavaScript. As I thought earlier in this talk, I think PHP picked the web developer because it made it clear. JavaScript is simple to type, but it's not clear what it's doing. PHP, it's not as easy to type, but it's not as easy to type to code. I mean, but it's clear what PHP is doing, and I think that's a pretty important reason why PHP still is the king of web developer. Like I said, 80% of all websites are doing on PHP, so I would absolutely recommend web developers to go first for PHP.
But for example, PHP, you only use it for backend. You cannot use it in the front.
From front end, you had HTML, CSS, and when you want a button to do something, you add an action for PHP, and PHP transforms like it's a conditional in PHP, which gets trusted in. But you said something that was.
We already touching what is web development. We can say that every time we are in the web, you have like 3 stages, if you want, or 3 sites that people almost use. You have the front end, that it is the aesthetic, if you want, what everyone see. That you have HTML or CSS, that you have to see the front page. That's front end, is what the user see. On the other side, the back end, where you have all the data management or all the queries that are making in the back, it's called the back end. And you mainly use, as you mentioned, PHP. You can use .SecView, Java, C++, or Rust. Well, you can use Python, but it is not recommended. But in between, you can use an API that it is a plug that will connect both sides, making requests with one to the other. Every time that you make a login, for example, you are filling a form with your information. You are giving it to the backend and say, knock, knock, I am here. This is my password. And if all matches and it is correct, you will be in. So that is like a communication protocol between the front and the back. That's mainly web development. And I think, even though it is summarized, I think web development has a nightmare. But why? I think sometimes, mainly now, it has become really complicated. Is that, for example, now you have an extension to do this and a new framework to do that. And every time, also if you see tutorials, they make really tough to make something simple. The other day, I watched a video talking about, hey, I just want to do a fucking Hello World app that just print out a message to the user, and I have to use React for this, and there is no need to do it. What do you think about that?
I think that that's actually web developer by design is complex because you actually have a lot of moving parts, and full stack developer is something that you can have bootcamps on, but I don't recommend, especially because you're not going to get a good knowledge of that. And I want to digress on something I'm sorry. I want to go back on something I said earlier, which was that you can do front end with PHP. That's not exactly true. You can send content from backend dynamically to the front end using PHP, but for transforming the content within the front end, I would absolutely recommend still JavaScript. I would not recommend personally JavaScript for the backend, like using Node.js, which is a framework for the backend. I would not recommend that. I would not recommend JavaScript in order to fetch content from the front to the back. Absolutely not. Wow. I would not recommend that.
That's something that, well, that's a hot topic because even though learning a language, you first have to immerse and you want to learn how to speak in those terms and make it your own and start playing around and doing stupid shit with it. And maybe you cannot explain what the script does, but it works at the end of the day. If that's what you need, that doesn't mean that even though you can do something, you should do it in JavaScript. JavaScript backend with Node is the example that many time ago, when a backend team was fired up and they say we only have front end team and they don't know nothing to do in the backend, but they know JavaScript. So what if we made something to use JavaScript in the backend? And that was a huge no. I think it is a horrible idea.
You know, JavaScript is a hot language and it's actually overtaking the web right now. At the end of the day, and this is something which we must clarify to everyone watching, especially if they're junior, you're going to learn whatever the company you're working at is currently using. So if you had an opportunity, like said, for example, something that's happening to me recently, you can work in the start of the IT project, then you have free reign and responsibility in order to code yourself, something that's going to be used for the years and years to come. But if you enter, which is the most likely scenario, into a company which already has an IT team, which already has developed solutions, you're going to learn whatever they're doing, because you're not going to be the only developer in the company. You're not going to be working alone, which is very important.
Yeah, because other side that you have to consider is that, okay, you can be efficient with a tool, you can have dexterity with it, but also you have to be a team player if you want. And it's like you have to communicate with your peers, being able to diagnose what the fuck are you doing, what you need, and what should be a good way to tackle your problem. And also, if you enter to a company and all of a sudden they move, I don't know why, but underneath also a decision to say we are not using this language anymore because of this problem, and we are going to switch to this one, and you are done. You either adapt to the environment of the company or you have to leave. There is no other decision, because we like it or not, a company or whoever in a team, they must decide what tools they have to use, and that will be between two possible variables. The tools that we want to use, and on the other side, how many people can we pick that use this tool? Because if we, for example, in my case, I love Rust, and it is really not developed enough, if you want, to be mainstream language, even though it is increasingly grow. It is becoming important every day. But on the other side, that you don't see many Rust stations all over the place. So even though I start a new team and I start developing software, I cannot hire a Rust developer because I can count them with the fingers of my hand. It's really tough. But on the other side, I see that I have a lot of JavaScript developers. I have to adapt with the environment that I have.
Exactly. So whether you're a new developer, you study computer science but never work, just know that it doesn't matter what your favorite language is. You're going to end up working with whatever the company is doing. I know companies here in Europe that are still working with Go, surprising or not. But yeah, if your company says you need to use Go, it doesn't matter that it's basically almost dead because Google dropped it. That's the subject for another talk. You're going to use Go because that's what the company is asking from you.
Well, also that programming language will be called later went, because that's what happened to that language. It went away.
Yeah.
But something else. What do you think a developer, aside from the tool that they will pick, aside the passion they need to be here, I think also they have to have passion for what they do. Every developer, yes.
I had a talk over the guy from Sys Army Discord the other day. We had a talk which was very sad, but actually very true. And it's that you don't actually see people in their 40s, 50s still working in the trenches as a developer. You see them in the higher up positions like manager or
that they do not develop anymore.
They don't develop anymore. And I think that's mainly because of two reasons. First, the ever-changing landscape of developer. You know, this landscape is very changing, and once you learn something, you learn everything that there is to know, and within 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 years, you're already getting obsolete, so you need to learn again. And that's not something people can really keep up. Exactly, mainly because when you get older, you have less time, you're more tired, your brain capability is slower, you do not learn at the same pace as you did in your 20s, 30s. So eventually you just crack up on that front. And within the other front, and this is something that we need to stress out, is that developers know it's a job, it's very stressful, you're gonna get a lot of extra hours, and you're not gonna get rich, you're gonna get paid good, you're gonna make a living out of it, maybe you can invest the money and make it returns in the long run, but you're not gonna get rich.
Yeah, but on the other hand, I also would like to point out is that time pass, every project will be easier if you want, because you know how to do it, and you will face more or less the same kind of problems that you face daily. Even though you can say the tool changed or there has been an update and there's a new way to do this, but in the core, the things will be easier if you want. But also, on the other hand, you face the problem and you know what to do, and you are trying to process all that in your mind, and you are saying to yourself, shit, all this I have to do is completely overwhelming. Also, the imposter syndrome hits back. Yeah, sometimes it's really shitty, man. But also, you know you don't have to give up, or even though there are a lot of people that give up, and it's common. You have to find a mood. For example, in my case, even though you and I are fucking still young, I love creating stuff. I like to build stuff that I mainly use, and then I deploy them. And also on the other side, if I'm not developing this craft, I will have to use Microsoft Excel, in my case, for final tasks. But I am able to do more by developing my own tools, and also to consider more of the little details that other people do not see. Because as the saying goes, the devil is in the little details. We are the devil, if you want, because we can care about that. And also, you have like more of a gain if you want, because I think it is better just to make a program that makes all your daily tasks, you feel more, what's the word I'm looking for? Fulfilled. You are more fulfilled when you are doing a software. And also, tell me you don't have this sensation that your code works is fine. But after hours and hours of complaining with the code, do not understand why it's not working, why you have a problem, and all of a sudden it works, it's wonderful.
Exactly, but you know, I get the same satisfaction and I want to make it work, but you know what? I don't see myself really doing this into my 50s. Like, for example, writing hours and hours of code in order to make a functionality work, which would make it flashier and easier. I don't see myself doing that in my 50s. I see myself doing this now in my 30s, in my 40s. But in my 50s, I want to be more in a higher up position. I want to be relaxing. I don't want to be coding extra hours or working hours and hours on a book that I just was too dumb to look, or something that I overlooked or just didn't think thought through. I think that's gonna be very hard on me when I get older, and I think everyone is gonna have the same feeling. So another tip that I would make is that if you enjoy coding, do it, because it's something that I eventually grinds you up, in my opinion. I know that this opinion isn't shared by everyone, but I think that's something that, I don't know, it just deteriorates over time in you.
Well, I completely understand, but I agree with you because you have to keep up with the environment, and the environment will not wait you. The environment will grow up without you. That's true. But on the other side, I think it's refreshing because I'm not only able to do the task, but to handle from many perspectives the same problem. For example, let's think about a website that show you a supermarket and the list of the products. You see the prices and everything, how it is designed and everything. But you know that it is not only that you have a nice looking page, that you know how people can reach you, how they can interact you, but you always want to have this or that to improve. And you will have like another perspective of still learning and still thinking of your problems. I think it is stimulating. Yes, you will sometimes be completely over with that and you don't want it anymore, but it will keep your head up. You will be in shape, always thinking of how to solve a problem, because at the end of the day, you are solving a problem, technical problem.
Well,
What are the topics you want to touch in the podcast in the future?
Well, I would actually like to touch more within specific technologies. I'd like to give advice on where to move, how to live as a developer, more healthy work-life balance. I'd actually like to tell stories about products or languages that change the industry. So I think that's going to be pretty interesting to tap into. What do you think? What are your expectations for these talks?
I want to talk about the stories of you and I, or the peers that we have. I also want to show how to code little stuff like do-it-yourself software. They are going to be short, do-it-yourself. But I think at the end of the day, showing how to do the stuff is what really matters. Although sometimes technical videos are lame or they are hard to watch, because we have to be honest, we can make it fun. I want to make reviews of the trends. If a new framework came up or something new in the environment, it is announced. And also, I want a debug section where we can talk about shit, about what we hate without without any matter.
Oh, you mean Java? Okay.
Yeah. Well, now we can be honest. Everyone hates Java.
Yeah, everyone hates Java, but here in Europe, it's the most common enterprise language to learn. So do not desperate if you need to learn Java. It's not as hard as it seems. I think it's something you have to implement. I think it's something for big teams, and Europe has a lot of big developer teams. At the same time, if you had a choice to go with someone other than Java, I would absolutely recommend that. But as we said before, you probably don't have a choice. So,
But another thing that I completely hate because of my style of developer, I hate object-oriented programming.
no, I love it. I actually love it. I think it's
I
good.
hate it. Well, you and I are going to have a discussion on this.
Okay, I think that's gonna be good for another talk. So, what do you say if we?
Yeah, let me say goodbye.